Hello, my name is Cassandra Cassiopeia, host of the Sedona Astrology Club. Today we're streaming a conversation with astrologer and psychic Yeri Yakubian about her online course that's coming up next month called Break the Cycle, Reclaim the Soul. It's an 8-week journey of healing from psychic abuse and trauma. Yeri is the author of Psychic Self-Defense in the Zodiac, which is an incredible manual on psychic energetics published by the AFA. Yeri's online space is called Astrology Healing Arts. Hi, Yeri. Nice to have you here.
Hey, Cassie, thanks so much.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about your course that's coming. I'm a big fan of your work. I really loved your book, and I use it when it's needed. Thank you for writing that. This course seems like similar topic, but definitely a deep dive, and I love how it's personalized to each person's natal chart. I'm curious, what about the timing of the energetics of now brought this course into being? What symbols are conducive to doing this type of work right now?
Well, we are at the end of the snake year in Chinese astrology, and also we are experiencing some astrological configurations unlike any we've ever collectively experienced before. And all the astrologers are talking about the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune that's going to happen in February, which is the month that this course starts. And there's a lot of closure happening right now because we're closing cycles in the sign of Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. And it's very emotional. Some would say it's a very karmic sign. So, for many of us, it's conducive to releasing childhood trauma, childhood baggage, past relationship trauma, and just preparing for a completely new cycle that's ahead of us.
Yeah, definitely feeling that, there's so much that's happened, especially over the last 5 years and collectively in each of our lives. So having a fresh start for all these big outer planet sign changes just feels wonderful. Um, why do you think astrology is an interesting lens to approach healing from trauma?
Well, astrology can make things easier to digest because it gives us more context and it gives us these symbols and archetypes and different angles on things that maybe never were explained or validated, or maybe we could never put a name to it. We could never describe what it was, but it was something that we always experienced or felt deep down inside. And a lot of people are drawn to astrology because it gives them a feeling of connection to the cosmos.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I guess each person's natal chart contains some clues, right, as to like their past history and also like places where they can strengthen themselves and prepare.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's an interesting combination for all of us of revealing our weaknesses, but also our strengths. So for every negative challenge, there's something in there that's going to help us to overcome that if we are willing to apply ourselves.
Mm. So in this course, are you teaching people how to interpret their own chart, or do you look at their chart with them as part of it?
A little bit of both. So I practice medical astrology, and although this is a course that's more about our emotional and psychic well-being, and specifically dealing with narcissistic abuse and trauma, the understanding of certain patterns in our chart and also patterns of people in our lives that have been abusive, if we happen to know their birth date or their chart, can be useful in knowing how to sort of navigate around certain situations and how to deal with those people if they still happen to be in our lives, but also just how to tap into those strengths that we all have because it's not something a lot of us were taught how to do, especially in the society that we live in.
Yeah, it's feels really important that you're doing this work. I feel that um, s- narcissistic abuse, that term is thrown around a lot, but
Definitely.
people don't really know it when they see it still, even though it's
Right.
commonplace.
I'm glad you said that because I do feel it's necessary to explain what narcissism is and is not because it's become such a buzzword along with gaslighting and a few other really emotionally charged words. And it's not something to just casually say about some idiot or jerk that, that didn't show up to the second date or, I mean, there's a lot of different situations where I hear people using this term and it, in a way, it belittles the very real, true, traumatizing experiences that certain people have had
Mm.
with narcissists.
Yeah, you sound pretty passionate, and I'm curious, like, what called you to create this?
Um, well, I speak from experience, but I'm at a place and a time in my life where I can teach from my scars. I've healed a lot of my trauma. I'm not saying it's all everything 100% gone because it's always a work in process, but I've dealt with my fair share of extremely mentally ill people, and very unstable people, and a few psychopathic people. So I see myself as having certain level of authority, not to speak in a medical way or a psychiatric way or anything like that. I'm not here to diagnose or make claims or anything like that, but more because I've been working on my own health for most of my life. I've had a lot of different problems that I've had to overcome physically as well as emotionally. So I have a lot of techniques, a lot of tools in my kit that I really enjoy sharing with other people.
I was about to say, out of everyone I know, I mean, you have so many different resources and talents that you draw upon with your work, and that's something I always appreciate about
Thanks.
you. Yeah. Yeah, so what are maybe some of the tools that you're going to bring into this course for people to empower themselves?
Yeah, so I will be incorporating a combination of energy work, visualizations, breathing exercises. I do practice martial arts, so I might throw in some not like heavy duty, physical activities, but some of the techniques that I've learned, especially on the energy level, to help empower people because I want to focus a lot on energetic hygiene, maintaining proper boundaries, things like that, and just tapping tapping the inner potential that we have. That's for a lot of people that have experienced a lot of abuse and trauma. It's not always easy to access that. So I'll be holding a container during that time to help people access their own healing abilities because we all have that, just like we all have psychic abilities. It's just a matter of knowing how and when to use them and for our own benefit as well as for others.
Wow.
And also flower essences, and I use a lot of different natural, remedies, but I would say primarily I'll be working with like energy work techniques, decording, things like that.
That's amazing. So who would you say this course is for? Like,
Primarily, as the title suggests, I'm calling it Break the Cycle, Reclaim Your Soul. And in the title, I believe too, it's, recovery from narcissistic abuse and trauma. So people that have experienced this either in their childhood or in their adult life through damaging relationships. I do have some people that have been interested in this class who are not necessarily survivors of narcissistic abuse, but they have a lot of friends or family that have had these experiences and they want to be able to not only understand this better, but help them. Maybe they're healing practitioners and they want more insight into what these dynamics entail and how to get through the other side.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's cool to just think of it as a resource for society in general, whether or not we're directly affected.
Yes, that's another point I'd like to make. I'm glad you said that because I make this analogy, right? This is more of like my philosophical take on things rather than, factual, but I see narcissistic abuse as being universal at this point because I'm not here to name names right now, but a lot of our leaders throughout the world have been exposed as being corrupt. And I mean, these are the people pulling the strings. These are the people, funding and orchestrating all kinds of chaos. And then there are people behind the scenes whose names we don't even know that have far more influence than we realize. And why do I say this is a form of narcissism? Well, because they glorify and elevate themselves while looking down at the rest of us as basically like as if we were cattle or people that they can control. So it's a pretty big problem, even if people haven't been individually affected at this point.
Yeah, the societal effect. I definitely see that and feel that. And it seems like that's one of the largest problems in our world right now is actually not recognizing when we're dealing with these energies and actually like a society that pedestalizes and encourages these types of behaviors for success and career and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Definitely.
I'd be excited to just see people be more educated in this area because it's not something you learn in school, and a lot of parents may not may not bring this up with their kids. So just knowing, I mean, I used to have a little psychopath checklist in my back pocket. There was a time
Mhm.
in my life where, my naivety was being taken, and there are like telltale behaviors, not to diagnose someone, but to be aware when you're dealing with someone who's displaying low empathy. Because it doesn't always look like low empathy. It can be very charming and
Oh, absolutely. You named it. That's one of the key traits of a lot of narcissists is they're very charming, charismatic, and talented people. They could be beautiful or just very intelligent, but they use these skills and abilities and gifts to get what they want from other people without a care for who they're stepping on, what the consequences are for other people.
yeah. Yeah, thank you for doing this work. I appreciate you. You offer a lot of content on this topic, so
I
really,
have more coming too. Yeah, I did offer a free ebook that people can download from my website. Just a very brief general glimpse into narcissistic abuse in relation to astrology. And I gave some examples of some people that overcame certain challenges in their life with their birth chart. But I have another couple of ebooks, I should say, that will be available pretty soon on my website.
oh, that's exciting. Heck yeah. So, what would you say? Like, obviously, there's traditional therapeutic support for people who've been through this type of trauma, but I would see this almost as like supplementational. And do you think that like taking a course like this, like how does it differ from traditional therapy?
Um, it's definitely not meant to be a replacement for any medical or psychiatric or, other therapy that people are receiving. But how it differs is that I'm focusing more on the energetics, spiritual integration, and using astrology as a tool and tying all of this together. which is basically the goal of astrology healing arts. It's astrology with healing arts. So I'm most of my work as an astrologer is focused on, that, like, using the astrological knowledge for um, toward well-being and personal empowerment, and dealing with not only emotional issues and trauma, but also, you know, like psychic attack. I mean, that's what my book was written. My last book was about dealing with, you know, um, you could say, some people would say supernatural forces or entities that are not necessarily part of this dimension, but I'm interweaving things in a very holistic way. So I guess in short, it's just
Mhm.
taking a holistic approach to the problem, and not necessarily about just talking it out, but becoming proactive, stepping into authority.
Yeah, that's amazing. I guess that kind of partially answers my other question, which was like when I think of traditional talk therapy, obviously everything is spiritual, but it
Hmm.
seems like your work is more focused on the spiritual side of healing and maybe even like the non-physical, the non-physical type of abuse that happens and non-physical ways that we can deal with it.
Hmm. Right. All forms of abuse are damaging. Not all forms of abuse make any physical marks, although they can cause physical problems. People can develop a lot of different chronic ailments because they've internalized, abusive things that were said to them repetitively, or because they were gaslit, to use that term correctly, they were kind of pegged into a corner and made to feel like everything was their fault and they're to blame. And this is especially damaging for those who experience this at a young age, like from a parent or caregiver of some type, because we are most impressionable when we're still developing. Our brains are still, our whole body, everything, we're still so impressionable. So anything that happens to us then is going to have a marked effect for the rest of our life. And we can change that, we can heal, but this is definitely not something that's taught to us.
Yeah, it gets into some interesting places too, because I think, we can suffer from narcissistic abuse from someone who isn't even fully a narcissist. You
Right.
know, a lot of people have parents who were going through their own trauma while being a parent, and
Exactly.
it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It's just,
Exactly. That's a great distinction.
yeah. Well,
Mm.
would you like to go over the course outline with us, just to give like
Sure.
a sneak preview?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an 8-week course, and with week one, I'm just going to be covering basic understanding of uh, narcissism and psychic abuse on the interpersonal and collective levels, because there's the micro and the macro, right? And a lot of people don't understand how that works. So I think it's really important to understand, like, how one reflects the other and differentiate that. And then also, pulling out the birth charts and, looking for certain signs like that, putting things together. So it's the first week is about having a framework, and then week two is about rebuilding safety and nervous system regulation. So I'll be offering some of those different techniques you asked me about, like for example, I do EFT, which is like tapping, emotional freedom technique, different sorts of, energetic hygiene and regulation um, exercises. And then week three is about reclaiming lost energy. So this is when we're going to go into certain journaling prompts and breathing exercises, visualizations, and the like. This is what, in what they call transpersonal psychology, which is basically like modern day shamanism. It's literally recalling lost parts of our soul that we left behind. And then week 4 is about unlearning shame and rewriting internal narratives. So this is going into the areas where energy has become stuck and stagnant and crossed wires and all this gunk and slime that blocks our potential. So we'll do some serious decording and deprogramming to make sure that those cords don't reattach. And then week 5 is about boundaries, detachment, and just, figuring out, is it going to be non-contact or low contact planning with certain people if those people are still in our lives. So this is where the spiritual warrior comes in because this is where a lot of people have trouble, because they have to get real with themselves. They have to toughen up, and take a stand for what's right. And that's not always easy because sometimes there's a little bit of an element of addiction there. So then week 6 will be healing attachment wounds by building self-compassion and self-trust. And so for survivors of a lot of abuse, this is brand new. It's not easy to trust oneself, trust one's intuition, and have, the sort of care and compassion one would have for a friend. So we'll be using astrology exercises and journal prompts there. Then week 7 will be about rebuilding trust, relationships, and future visioning. And this is where we're going to work on improving the quality of our interactions with other people in our lives. And so, yeah, I mean, we'll just reorient ourselves with all forms of life, including animals and even nature. And then the final week, week 8, was about the final integration, the life after abuse. What does this look like? Long-term empowerment. And then we'll be focusing on creating a personalized, unique astrology healing arts practice because we all have our different methods, our different ways that work for us. So that's where it's going to get tailored to the very end.
Really, that's really well done, Yuri.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I really love the specificness, the individuality of it, but also it seems like there's also a perk to being in that group container and relating to others through the process.
Definitely. There's something validating and helpful about that. It just brings a sense of levity, like just knowing there's others on similar wavelengths going through this and it's not always some, it's like we live in a culture where we see things like, these talk shows where it's always really extreme. The people that are going through these types of breakups or narcissistic relationships, and it's like, whoa there, that's it's like really, really extra. And sometimes it doesn't look like that. Sometimes it's the person you would never suspect because they don't really talk about it. So it takes away that feeling of isolation, I think, that a lot of people have to know that, hey, there's really mellow people on a spiritual path that are still trying to get through that, that last hurdle of heavy stuff they've been carrying around.
Wow, that's amazing, Yuri. Thank you. Is there
Yeah.
anything else you'd like to share about the course or about your work?
Mm. Well, I think we covered most all of it. I will be putting out a workbook. I'm not sure when that'll be published. Hopefully by this year, but if not, it would be early next year. And that's going to be kind of a part 2 to the book that I wrote before, but more of a workbook so that, people literally have a manual, like something to work with, for spiritual empowerment and just, like it's different from just like reading about something and then having a way of, okay, like having drills or having prompts like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And is it gonna be, where you plug in your own chart and then you look at the content of the psychic self-defense in the Zodiac book?
Yeah, it's not necessarily something that you will have to have the first book to be able to work with. It's just that it'll be maybe a continuation of the
Oh,
work. That might be a better way of explaining.
wow.
Mm,
Well, that's awesome. I look forward to it.
thanks.
Yeah, and we have actually the Cuptown meetup this Sunday. So if
Yeah.
anyone's local to our area, they're welcome to come to Cuptown Coffee House. I think it's 12 to 2 p.m. And we'll be there talking about the course and celebrating the powerful new moon in Capricorn we have coming up.
Gonna be an intense time. Yeah, I should mention, I didn't think of this earlier when you asked, but this course takes place during eclipse season as well, which normally I would not plan such an event during such a time. But in this case, we've got all of these really powerful things happening like back to back to back. We've got, snake year ends and horse year begins. We've got Saturn conjunct Neptune at the very beginning of the sign of Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac. So a whole new, cycle is starting. And then we've got these eclipses, which is like stirring everything up. So I'm taking advantage of all of that grime and dirt and detritus. I'm just like, yeah, let's shake it up. Let's take advantage of this moment to just get that out of there,
You're a true alchemist.
I'm working on it.
I see you. Well, thank you, Gary. I hope everyone can check out your website. It's astrologyhealingarts.com. And yeah, great to have you in our community. Thanks for coming on here today.
Such a pleasure to be a part of it. Thank you so much, Cassie.
You're welcome. Bye.
Okay, bye.